Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. In John's case, good evening, John. I did remember, and I do remember every week, but don't always get to say anything. So, good evening, John. This week is going to be our last week on the wall cabinet. And we're then going to have a little break, and I'm going to prepare for the next project. Now, we'll only be away for a week, so next Sunday won't be on, but the following Sunday we will be, and I'll have a brand new project, and I'll talk about that at the end of the show. So we'll we'll go on with that then. So right now what I want to do is I want to spend a fair bit of time. We're going to put everything together. Now, during the week I did a lot of drilling and a lot of setting up and getting everything sorted so that we could put this cabinet together. So it seemed to be going on forever and ever and ever. And so I got a bit excited during the week and finished off a lot of the parts. So all we have to do now is fit the parts. One of the things that I did want to do is fit one of the hinges into the door. Now, it's something that people keep asking me about all of the time. How do I do hinges? Unfortunately, there's no quick fix for hinging. There are ways of getting around the tasks necessary to fit the hinges, but there's no quick fix on fitting hinges. It's a delicate little operation most of the time, and you need to be extremely careful when you're doing it. Now, the other thing is having a number of different tools to do the thing. So you probably need to gear up if you're going to do a lot of hinging. I've set myself up so that I do all my hinging pretty much the same way every single time. If I have to go outside of the parameters that I use now, then I have a little bit of soul searching to do to get it done, and a little bit of practice. And that's the key, doing that little bit of practice and getting things sorted. So bear with me with this one, because I've had a bit of a practice on the cabinet, and I've fitted the hinges, or one of the hinges, to the cabinet. All I'm going to do now is fit it to the door. So we're going to go through that process, and this is one of the harder bits, because when we're fitting the cabinet door, I'll turn a light on for you so that you can see what I'm doing. So just bear with me for a sec. Forgot to turn the light on, so you can't see. How's that? That's a little bit better. I'm not in the dark now. I was before. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to fit the hinges. Now, as you can see, and I'll just get Pam to come in on this one. As you can see, here I've already fitted one of the hinges. Now, another one of the little things that I've done is, this was a tray that I made for a box that I eventually changed, and I thought, nice little keepsake for all my nuts and bolts and screws and things. And these are the bits and pieces that I'm going to use to put the box together. So these are my hinges, and as you can see, that fits in there quite nicely. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to fit that hinge. We're going to put another one in the other end, which is there, and I'm going to show you how to put that one in there. So that's how that's going to work. Now, let me get the box first before we actually start that process. And I'll just show you what we have. So what I've done in the cabinet is, all I've done is I've routed out these cavities. Okay, so the rebates are fairly easy, and the reason I've gone all the way through the thickness of the timber is because the hinge actually fits like that. Right? And so when it goes in, you've only got a small amount exposed at the back of it. It's not sticking right out like that, which I do see sometimes on cabinets, and it looks a little bit, to me it looks a little bit odd. So all I've done is I've fitted that one there, and this one will, of course, it fits in there as well. So now I need to fit the hinge into the door. Now these hinges that I have here, I can't remember where I bought them from. I was searching through my cabinetry bits and pieces some time ago and found that when I built my second cabinet, my first cabinet, I must have bought 2 pair of these, and I have no idea where I bought them from, so I can't actually tell you where they come from. Might have come from Bunnings or a hardware store somewhere. I don't know. So the next bit is to fit my door. Now the door is going to go on here. Now how do I line up these holes? You can see that I've already done a little bit of work there by drawing things on there, but the thing to remember here is that we're going to have a drawer on the bottom of it, and this is the cover for the drawer. Now these are things that you need to take into consideration. If I just bung that on there and then try to fit the drawer later, it might not work. The other thing that has to happen is I'm going to have a top and a bottom panel. That's these 2 panels here. Now those 2 panels are going to be screwed on there. I don't want this binding on the top on the top panel. I also don't want the drawer binding on the bottom panel, so there has to be a little bit of spacing involved. Now when I did my spacing, all I've done is cut myself a piece of card. I attached everything and then I just used that as my gauge. So that's all I need. Now that piece of card was actually is a piece of 240 GSM, which for those of you who are really astute will remember that that's the size of the material that we use for adjusting the jig. Okay, so it's 240 GSM. So all I've done is cut a strip of that and used that as my gauge. You can do it other ways, but I find that quite simple. You can make a little wooden one if you like, but that's all I need, and I only need a small amount of space. So that gave me my measurement between the 2 panels at the top. In there, and there, I still had a little bit of space so that everything opened and closed, and it didn't look like I had huge gaps between each thing. So I had to sort of figure out these little things as you go along. Now, I did it during the week because we just don't have time to do that sort of stuff in 1 hour, and of course fit all the other bits and pieces. So think about how you put all those bits together, and I'll assemble all that in a second. But the first thing is to assemble, put the hinge on. So when I'm putting the hinge on, I had all that lined up nicely. When I put these on here, what I wanted to do, just make sure I had everything exactly right. I clamp everything together. So all I'm doing is clamping that to the bench for the moment. Just make sure I've lined everything up the way I had it when I first did it. What that does, it just stops it from moving around a little bit. And it gives me, I've got all my spacing right. I'm flush on that back edge. I'm not too concerned about the front edge. That front edge there, I can plane a little bit off that later. But I just want to make sure that I've got my back edge flush. Now, this may seem to be a lot of work for just a couple of hinges, but I find that if I do it properly every time, you can see everything's lined up. When you do your drawing of this sort of thing, you need to make sure that your pencil is exceptionally sharp. Now I don't want to put a whole lot of marks on it, but all I do is I line up like so. Nice little line there, slide along to here. I'll draw that line in there. You can see I've already done them a little bit beforehand. And that gives me where I'm going to put my hinge. I could always set the hinge in there and just draw around the edges of it, but I prefer to make sure that I've got everything right now. So everything was in place, and it wasn't going to move while I did that process. And of course I'd do that both ends. Keep those handy. Get rid of my cabinet. Now when I do this, what I'm going to do here, you can see I've already got light lines on there, and I do that deliberately. Square off where I put those two marks. And it's a good thing I do this because I'm just checking to make sure that I've got them right. Now the distance in, you can see I've already got a pencil mark on here. The distance from that edge to here is the same thickness as the wall of my cabinet. So the idea, I had a ruler here somewhere. So the idea is to measure the thickness of your timber and be exact with it. Okay, so it needs to be exactly right, particularly with your hinges. So I've got 14 millimeters, exactly 14 millimeters. For those of you in the US, I do have a ruler with inches on it here. Gosh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9/32. So making sure that you get that exact is very important. Okay, so I'm just going to check my measurement here at 14 mil. So I've got exactly 14 millimeters on my line. Now it's time to cut out the rebate. If you look at this end here, you can see I've got it all nicely trimmed up. It's 14 millimeters. And so what I'm going to do now is just prep it. So the first thing I do is I line my ruler up on my line, and I put it on the line. I don't put it outside the line so that I'm cutting on the line. What I want to do is I want to cut it on the inside of my pencil line. And I'm going to clamp my ruler in place there. I could set the square on the bottom here, but I'm not going to do that. I want to go along the line that I've drawn in. And then score along the inside of the line. Now, just scoring that, incidentally, these crisp Vespa tools are a really nice little tool. There's a link on the bottom of our site to his tools. I don't know if he's got any left. I haven't heard. Haven't seen much of Chris lately. Now, all I'm doing is very lightly cutting there. Now, the important thing, the reason I do it nice and light, and I do a number of cuts, I've only got to go down a couple of millimeters anyway, is I'm cutting along the grain. And if your grain happens to be a little bit dodgy or a bit moves away a little bit, you'll find that your marking knife, your knife will actually run along the grain, and that's not good enough because you need to have a straight back edge where you're going to do it. Now, just a light cut to start with, and then you can go deeper as you go. Okay, so that's my back edge. Now, along the sides. Now this one here, you can do this a little bit harder because we're cutting across the grain. You can see now I've cut on the inside of the line. My line's still visible there. I'm going to do the same here. So before I do that, let's just clamp that in place so it doesn't move anywhere. Now use your square and cut on the inside of the line. It's easier to trim a little bit off than to try and sort of fill up a gap. And then we'll move along to here. Like so. And so basically I've cut around my hinge. So when you sit the hinge on there, you can see that it goes from line to line, and the centre of the pivot is actually running down the edges of my door. All right. So I've got those to do. Now what I'm going to do here, what I've done is I've put my, oh, we were charged. I had the battery for my trimmer router. Beautiful. We're all good. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that out with the trimmer router. I'm just to take out most of the material, and then I'll tidy it up with a chisel afterwards. So that's where we're going to go with this. The thing about it is the router bit that I'm using to do this, and you can use lots of different router bits. Now I've just got a little Makita router, and I'm using TSR W5, which is one of the router bits that comes in our kit. It's an end cut router bit, so the end of it has actually got teeth on it enough to be able to trim up the work. The other thing that I've done, made sure that when I did my adjustment, I set the height to the thickness of my hinge. Okay, so when you have the hinge in half, I've got 4 millimeters there, so obviously 2 millimeters is going to be the depth of the hinge. So the way to do that is to set the hinge on there and just set it to the center of the pivot. Okay, so it'll come in. Pam's just trying to get that one right.
Still.
Okay.
No, that's hard.
Hard to do it, but anyway, you can see the point. Now, this little router comes with 2 platforms. You can see I've got a round platform, and this one here I've got a follower mounted in it. I don't normally have the follower mounted in it, but then again I've got a flat platform that comes with the router as well. And I've found that the flat platform or the square platform is better when we're trying to cut this size of a hinge. So now it's just a matter of resting on here and trimming out. Now I can use different sizes of those. It doesn't have to be this small. I can use a bigger one if I want to, use an 8mm, whatever, because I've got quite a bit of space to actually remove, material to remove. So let's go into here, and this is the way I'll do it. So as you can see, I've got a flat surface in there now. So that finishes with my router. Now it's a matter of tidying up with the chisel. Now, I have a set of chisels here. These little chisels are just little palm chisels. So now you can get, there's lots of different brands of these. I find this one is quite a good one. Originally, I bought these off Jim Davies, who is no longer working. He's retired. I think Carbatech do carry a brand. Probably not that brand. I'm not quite sure. You probably have to talk to the guys at Carbatech to find out if they're made. But these ones here are quite good. They're a nice little chisel. As you can see, I've kept them really, really sharp. So just making sure that I've got a sharp chisel every time I use it. So these ones here, I do not cut. I do not hit them with a mallet. Everything's done with just pressure. Now, to get it to work properly, you need to make sure that it's sharp. And as you can see, these are quite sharp. So all I'm doing there is just rocking back and forth. And the knife cut that I put in it originally gives somewhere for the knife to actually fit in, or the chisel to fit in. So it gives me a place to put the chisel when I'm using it. So I can just rock that into there, rock it back and forth. Now, don't get in the habit of using it as a lever. One of the things that I find, and I see it quite often, is the edges are chipped away because people use their chisel as a lever rather than as a cutting implement. And it is a cutting implement, so therefore use it as a cutting implement by making sure that... I need another cramp. That's shifted on me. Just reset this here a bit. Make sure that when you're cutting these that you have lots of support when you fit them, when you're cutting it. And I mean that by having the bench underneath. Don't let it overhang the bench. I often see that happen as well, and that just causes you a little bit of grief because things flex a bit, particularly when you're working with a thin piece of material. Okay, so all I'm doing there is just cutting. I'm not trying to take the whole lot off at once. The other thing is, don't put your fingers in front of the chisel. I often see guys who are holding a chisel like that, and the first thing they do is when they slip, go straight into their fingers. That's not a very good idea. You can see that that's cut off quite nicely, and it just came off in one piece. So it's quite easy to do. And then my hinge, I just need to see where it fits. So it actually fits in there exactly where I wanted it to do. You can see it's a very nice fit. Just got to tidy up the corner. Furry stuff there, that I just need to get rid of. Just making sure I've got straight cuts all the way down. Doesn't matter if you undercut a little bit. If you want to undercut, by all means do that because it gives you a little bit of tidy thing. Just makes things fit a little bit nicer.
What about if you overcut, go too far?
This is why I said to you earlier, that's the question from
Michael.
Michael?
Yeah.
Michael, that's why I said cut inside your lines. Make sure your line work is correct. If you overcut, you're going to have gaps around your hinges. And that looks a little untidy, but you can rectify it by actually putting another little piece of material in beside the hinge and then just tidy it up by sanding it later down the track. So you can do that and you can repair little bits and pieces like that. So let's see how that fits. I'm not always confident that it's going to fit. Even though I fit lots and lots of hinges, I sometimes find a little bit of apprehension when I'm going to start looking at fitting things. So, let's have a look. So the first thing I need to do is I need to fit my hinges onto here. So I already had one fitted, so I'm going to put that one in there. This is taking longer than I thought. Anyhow, we'll try it. Just need a piece of offcut. Actually, I won't use offcut, I'll use this. And a clamp. Where'd I put them? Behind me. I'm just going to fit that in there, and that's flush with the top. It's actually my French hook, which I was going to fit as well. That's the hinge I used for this, so I'm going to screw that into place. Now these ones, I've already had these in here, so I know it fits. You can see I don't do it, I don't blaze straight in and go hard at it. The third one in there. And they're not quite hard enough, and I'm flush on the inside, which is really nice. Now this side here, and this side hasn't got any holes in it, so I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So make sure we've got that flush. That's my second hinge. You can see that fits really snug. I have another tool here. Now this little gadget, it's countersunk on the end of it, which is the same as the countersinking in the top of the screw hole. And then we have our drill there, and that countersunk piece is sprung loaded, and we have a little drill bit that comes out through the middle of it. Okay. Now you can adjust the size of that by undoing this grub screw here. You can adjust the depth of your screw by resetting the drill bit with that grub screw in there. So I've got mine set so that it does about that much. That's all I need just to get it started. Because remember, we're working with soft timbers. So put it in your drill, set it in place, and make sure you've got it pulled up tight against the backboard. Just set it vertical. Two, three. Oops. Don't want to go in really hard. Like I said, just leave it a little bit loose, so you've got a little bit of adjustment. If you're not confident with your drill as a screwdriver, use a hand screwdriver. There's not a lot of pressure needed. And there we have our second hinge fitted. And now to fit the door. Take that away. So here is the fun bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to fit that. Oh, I just love it when a plan comes together. So that's going to fit in there beautifully. Okay. Now I need to set some height on there. I had a little tool here I made a couple of weeks ago to sit things on. It might work. I have a little gap here, but I'll be able to fix that. Wrong screws. Now because I've got shorter screws, you can see that the screws we're going to use for this one here are much smaller. I have a second one of these that I've recessed so that it only does a tiny little bit. It doesn't come out as far. The other thing I've done with this one here is I've changed the drill bit in it so it's a little bit smaller. Because I'm doing a lot of small cabinets and boxes, I need to have a couple of setups. So this one's a little bit smaller. So just pull that in close there. Pull this one in close. Okay, here's the litmus test. This is going to test whether it's going to work or not. So I'm just going to put two screws in, one at the top and one at the bottom, and I've got to find the right size screwdriver. So this is the top of my cabinet. Put one in the bottom of the cabinet, bottom as well. As you can see, just doing it by hand. I'm not using a machine or a drill bit, a drill press, a drill. I don't want them to think. So that's just those two. Let's see what happens. Here we go. Ha. I don't think I could have got that any better. It's a perfect fit. So just go ahead and fit all the rest of the screws. I don't often drill all of the holes at once when I'm doing these cabinets. I'll generally just do the top and the bottom one, just in case I need to adjust something, but this one fitted pretty much spot on first go. The screws, if you're looking for screws, get onto Jim Carroll at Carroll's Wood Turning Supplies. He does have a supply of them, so you can pick up some relatively small screws. Brilliant, I love it. And there we have our our door fitting beautifully. Get rid of that. And I just need to fit a catch at some stage. Okay, so I'll do that a bit later and I'll show you when I've got it done. The next thing to do is to fit the drawer and the drawer front. Now, let me put that aside for a sec. If you remember last week, we built this lovely little drawer. Now, it's dovetailed, of course, so we've got our dovetails, and one of the things that I spoke about last week is the fact showing blind dovetails. If I put that on there and glued it in place, you can see my grain runs continuously around my piece of timber, but I've got what's essentially a blind dovetail. If you wanted to be more of a purist about it, what you can do is you can split this piece of timber down the middle. So, just hold it still, Pam. You can split this piece of timber down the middle, and you can use 1/2 as the front of the box, and then you just glue the other half back to where it came from. All right. You need something a little bit thicker than this, of course, and that will give you this blind dovetail effect. All right. This is the way that a lot of the people that I know who are in cabinetry are doing things nowadays. Build a cabinet out of soft timbers or out of less expensive timbers, and then put a fancy piece of timber on the front of it. Okay, so they're doing quite a bit of that. Now, the thing that I did last week, when I built this little box, I pre-drilled the holes and countersunk to put the screws in. Now, as you can see, it's not a very big cabinet. Drawer, not a very deep drawer. So how do I get a screwdriver in there? What I could do is I could drill a set of holes in the back of it here and just go all the way through. Not a problem, because it is in a drawer and it's in a workshop drawer. So that could work. But I went one better. I went along to my favourite store, and in the past I've used these tools here. Now, this is a flexible screwdriver, so it's just a matter of putting magnetic as well. It's just a matter of putting a screwdriver in there, and you can see this will turn by putting it in the drill press and drilling, you know, just using it like a screwdriver. Okay. Now this one is offset. Okay, so it's around a corner. The problem I found was it didn't fit. All right, so I had to go find something else. This one comes with a couple of little handles that screw into there actually, and it does exactly the same thing. You can turn it like so, and you end up with this rotating around like a normal screwdriver. All right, so that didn't work. So I went along to my favourite store and I found this one here. It's a DeWalt one, which is a common brand. You'll see that Dave Stanton uses them all the time. He has lots of DeWalt equipment. This one's exactly the same, only it's smaller. Okay, so it's a tiny little one. It's magnetic, so you can just pop your screwdriver in there, you screw the driver in there, and it'll fit quite nicely, and it fits in the drawer. That's the beauty of it, it fits in the drawer. So all I need to do is attach my drill to that, rid of these. So I attach that to my little drill. And again, another Bunnings cheap drill. And you can see, I can do that, or I can go backwards. It's quite a good little tool. So all I need to do now is fit it up. So I've already fitted it once. So I've got the screws in the right place. At least I hope they are. And these screws that I used for here, Again, just little brass screws. There's nothing. Just want to make sure I get that first one in, like so. And my second one. Just make sure I've got it in the hole that I put my pre-drilled holes. Just takes a little bit of jiggery pokery, you might say, just to get that sorted. Now the thing about this is you need to cramp it down. Okay, so I've cramped that in place. That way things aren't going to move. Just got to get another one on the other end. So, and now make sure I'm going the right way. Two. You need long fingers. The short, stumpy, fat fingers like mine don't work all the time. Same thing. Get it in there as best you can. Same one here. Job done. So as you can see, this little tool is going to become a very handy little screwdriver for when you're doing small boxes where you haven't got a lot of space to work in. So again, DeWalt tool, really quite nice. There's my drawer. And that's going to fit into there. Oh, how nice is that? And we've got a nice little space underneath. So cabinet's coming along really nicely now, and that slides in and out quite nicely. All I need to do is put something on the front of it to open it, and the next thing to do is to fit my tops. So, got about 15 minutes. So what I did with the top panels is I built the two top panels and I chamfered around the edges. I think I showed you that last week. So all I've done is just taken a light chamfer for around the edge, and I've done that on both of them. Now the thing that I want to point out here is that even though we have a fault in the timber is still okay because it's going to be covered at the back of it by the French hook is going to fit over the back of here. So what this does, this thickness of material does, it actually gives me a bit more support for the French hook on the back of it. So when I'm going to fit these, I'll lay my cabinet down. And that's going to fit on like so. And it's just a matter of screwing that in place. Now, normally I would glue that in place and then screw it, but I'm not going to put any glue on it today. I will do it later. I just want to show you how it looks when we've got it sorted. So I think I have just hang fire for 2 seconds. I've just got to go and get myself a long clamp. I don't know if this is going to fit, but we'll try it anyway. I've got the long one if I need it. Not quite. If I take the drawer out, it will. What I want to do is just want to clamp that to the top. And now what I'm going to do is just check my measurements, just to make sure that I've got my measurements correct here. I've got a 5mm overlap there, and I have a 5mm overlap there, so that's in perfect position. Just making sure that's pushed down. So I want the cabinet to be pushed down flush, and by doing that it's going to be flat on the back edge of the cabinet so that it's not going to go anywhere. And it's just a matter of putting the screws in. I have 4 screws here that are going in it. Again, up with our screwdriver. Make sure you've got the right size screws for these. If you've got them, if they're too short, or they're not going to work very well. If they're too long, they're going to poke through into the top of your cabinet. Just make sure you countersink everything before you start. Now we're going to have some fun because we've got to put the bottom one on. So if I turn the cabinet around, I can use a short clamp for this. It pays to make sure that you've got everything made exactly the way you wanted it done beforehand. I do see occasionally people who are building things, and they'll build it and then they'll add the piece before they actually fit it properly, and we end up with things having to be shifted and moved and changed. Just going to go along a little bit. Just got to get my measurement right. I probably should have measured it earlier. I should have put a mark on it so that my 5mm there. It's too much. Be reasonably accurate with this sort of thing so that you know, your cabinet looks quite nice. Even though it's going to be a workshop cabinet, you're going to be sitting in your workshop all the time, you still want it to look pretty nice, and you want people to see it and say that you're a reasonable craftsman because you've got things that actually look nice. Very important that you make sure that the screws are only just long enough here, because it's if they're too long, they're going to scrape on the bottom of the drawer. Okay. So now we're looking pretty good. Now I've got the top and the bottom on it, and the drawer's looking good. So basically, there's your cabinet finished. It's just a matter of fitting some hardware and some bits and pieces, but we have what we classify as a finished cabinet. And the door opens beautifully. So we've got our little feature showing on the front. That same feature is around the door itself. It needs a good sanding and finish. So I'm going to leave the protective coating on the perspex until such time as I've got the finish on. But our last task is to put on the French hooks. Okay, now I've got the French hooks made, and the French hooks, I'll find the other one. The French hooks, there's heaps of ways of making these French hooks. I've seen I've seen them fitted on the outside, I've seen them fitted down the middle, I've seen them where you've got one big wide one, one little narrow one, or one big wide one and one little narrow one down the bottom. I've seen them fitted on here and here. I've also seen them fitted inside the cabinet so that they're actually inside, right? They don't actually go on the outside. The edge of the cabinet actually meets the wall. I've seen them fitted like that as well. That looks really nice, but it doesn't work in this workshop. In this workshop, you'll notice that all the walls in the workshop here are not painted. There's no finish on them at all. Now, the reason for that is that we're in a very humid place, and if you've got painted things, what you end up with is build-up of mould. And I don't want a build-up of mould because the moisture can't get away. So if I've got it uncovered, it can absorb the moisture or expel the moisture depending on what it's like without too much problem. If I want to give it a sand to clean something off, it's quite easy. You don't have to repaint and all that sort of thing. So there's that sort of drama. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to fit my French hook on like so that it exposes it. And what it does, it leaves a gap on the wall, which allows an airflow behind the cabinet. Now I want that airflow so that the moisture that we do have here isn't going to interfere with the back of the cabinet and make it all mouldy or do anything with it. So that's what we're going to do. So now I'm going to fit. Just, whoop. I have to take the drawer out because it's going to drop on the floor. You can see that damage that was on the cabinet there, and that one's going to fit on there, and this one is going to fit. No, I've got them back front, I think. This one I want flush with the top of the cabinet. No, it's the other way around. Not quite flush with the top of the cabinet, but it's left a little bit of space there. This one's flush with the bottom of the cabinet, just under. Same process. The important thing to remember with this is you need to make sure that you're square with the cabinet. So setting it up square is extremely important. And my cabinet's square, I know that because it's the way we built it. The right drill. Two in there. One in there. I think I had the other one in the other end. I did. Okay, so 4 screws in there. Again, that's something I would drill, a screw in, I would glue on. And there I have my French hooks fitted on the back. Beautiful. I probably should have tested that before and that is our cabinet finished. So what I need to do now is put some hardware on there. Okay, so I'll just go to my other camera. So all I need to do now is put some hardware on there, so a latch and handle and something for my drawer to fit in. Okay, so then that will look quite nice when it's done. And I've got my French hooks, and I can move it around the workshop at willy-nilly. A light sand, coat of finish, and then a little bit of fittings. So now I just want to show you one other little thing before we go on to our last project for the year. This is the cabinet I built before. Right, I've just started putting the fittings on the inside of it. It's exactly the same cabinet. It's got a door on it, it's got a drawer on it, and I've started fitting little bits and pieces. And this is how I made those. What I've done is I've cut myself a couple of pieces of material at 45 degrees, okay? So that's going to sit like so. And then I've added a piece of compact laminate, which is giving me a really hard surface on the top to drill and mount my parts. You can see that here. So all I'm going to do is put a layer of these up the cabinet. Okay, so there'll just be 4 or 5 of those, and then I'll use them for the same thing. Okay, now we're running out of time. So what I want to do is I want to give you a little teaser of what's going to happen when we come back. Now, a little story to go with this. The people who run the Tassie Boat Show came to us and said, would you like to exhibit at the Tassie Boat Show? That was in 2018? 2019. 2018, 2019, they came to us and said, can you do a demo down at the Tassie Boat Show? And it happens to be the biggest boat show in the world. That's what we're told. So in Australia. So it's a wooden boat show. So everything's wood and it's huge. So they said to us, do you reckon you could make something small that would fit in a boat? And I was thinking of these little cabinets, right? And I thought, no, they're probably a little bit too big and so on. So we came up with this idea of using a special jewellery box, which is, that's what this one is a special jewellery box, is using that as a set of drawers or a little cabinet, right? So here's the teaser. What we did with it was we stood it up on its end. So effectively what we've got is a little cabinet. And you open the door, of course, as per a normal little cabinet. We thought, that's going to be a little bit difficult because it's small. It's exactly the same way we build a special jewellery box. So we went from there to here. Now what we did with this cabinet was we made the cabinet exactly the same. You can see it's got all the dovetails in it, but instead of putting feet on it, on the bottom here, we added the back onto it. Okay, so the back is actually, this is coachwood, by the way. It's not cedar or anything like that. It's piece of coachwood. Then I thought, well, what am I going to do with the rest of it? So we decided to add on the top and the bottom, which is what I did. And then we went through the other processes of actually hinging and putting a little door in it with a shelf in it. We thought, well, that'd be good. That'd be really, really nice to do. And this is again a prototype. The door frame is way too thin with this one, and I've made a couple of errors here. You can see I've got a couple of holes in it that shouldn't be in there, but it still doesn't look out of place. So we came up with that, and I thought, you know, another cabinet in a thing. What would you put in it, right? So we decided to change it. So we went on to the next one, and the next prototype happen to be this one. Now, this one is exactly the same as that one I just showed you. It's exactly the same size as the special jewellery box. Again, dovetails. The back has been added. We've got a top and a bottom on it, not a problem. But this time I added drawers. So my little drawers all come out like so. And the shelving also is removable. Okay, so you can take the shelving out as like, if you like, whatever. The thing about the shelving on this one here is they're just rebates. Okay, so there's no dovetails or anything in here. Now, this is where I'm going to stop with my explanation, because these are not the ones we're actually going to make. This is the teaser. So we're going to make something that's similar to this, only we're not going to use commercial draw knobs. We're not going to use standard rebates. And we're not going to have just 4 drawers. So when we come back, I'm going to build a little cabinet like this, and it will have drawers in it, and that's about all I'm going to say about it. So keep that in mind when we come back. It may be a little bit long, the project, but we're going to end up with a jewellery drawer, okay, or a drawer, I don't know, what would you call it, Pammy?
Oh.
Cabinet, little drawer, jewellery cabinet with drawers. Okay, so that's what we're going to have. So that is going to be the next project. Now this one's in cedar, that other one was in coachwood. We may have a combination of timbers, we may not, okay? But ponder on it, folks. We will be back in 2 weeks' time. So have a good week, everybody, or have a good 2 weeks, everybody. Stay safe. Flick over to Dave. He's doing toolbox bits and pieces, or home tool kits today. So that would be really interesting, because everybody needs a toolkit at home. So he's going to be going into that. But anyway, Dave, jewellery chest. Yes, why not? That would be good. Okay, so we'll call it a jewellery chest, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. So have a good one, everybody, and I will see you later.